We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order at 7:05. Welcome everyone to the West Covina City Council chambers for the regularly scheduled meeting of the Planning Commission, Tuesday, March 12, 2013. Pledge of Allegiance tonight be led by Commissioner Menifee. And please remain standing for a few moments of silent prayer.
Face the flag, put your hand over your heart and say with me, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have roll call, please.
Blackburn. Here. Commissioner Holtz. Here. Commissioner Woods. Here. Commissioner Menifee.
Here.
Chairman Stewart.
Here. Approval of the minutes of February 12th. Any changes, corrections? If not, they'll be approved as presented. Any changes? All right. Approved as presented.
Approved. Second.
All in favor? Aye. 5-0. Okay, we'll go on to oral communications. This is a time when any member of the public may speak to the Commission on any matter within the scope of duties assigned to the Commission. Other matters included on this agenda may be addressed when this item is under consideration. For all oral communications, the chairperson may impose reasonable limitations on public comments to assure an orderly and timely meeting. The Ralph M. Brown Act limits the Planning Commission and staff's ability to respond to public comments at this meeting. Thus, your comments may be agendized for a future meeting or referred to staff. The Commission may ask questions for clarification if desired at this time. By policy of the Commission, oral communications at this time on the agenda is limited to a total of 15 minutes. Persons who are not afforded the opportunity to speak at this time may do so under item later on the agenda. I do not have any speaker cards. Anyone wish to speak? All right. Irene Fleck, please.
Looking at the materials in the library on tonight's meeting reminded me of my concern. There was an item about a non-permitted secondary house that had been constructed on someone's lot. This brings back the concern I have with the housing element that is suggesting that people will have permission without going through permitting to build a secondary house for either rental or for self-permitting. I'm really concerned about this, and before anything is really passed, I hope you'll give it special consideration. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. Anyone else wish to speak on open communication? All right. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and get on to the consent calendar. Can we have a staff report, please?
The only thing on the consent calendar tonight is the forthcoming. We do have several items that we expect to have on the agenda on the March 26th meeting.
All right. Any questions for anybody? If not, we'll need a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Holt, second by Commissioner Blackburn. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? 5-0. We do not have any public hearings tonight. We'll go ahead and move on to the non-hearing items. Excuse me, get this thing. Non-hearing items number 3. It's the Art in Public Places number 12-01, final review. The applicant is Andrew McIntyre. The location is 220 South Citrus Street, the McIntyre Square. Can we have a staff report, please?
Yes. The Planning Commission on January 8th, 2013, reviewed a conceptual design for the proposed artwork for the McIntyre Square at 220 South Citrus Avenue. At that time, they reviewed the type and style of the artwork, the placement, the material, time frame for installation, and security measures. The Commission voted unanimously for the approval, and I notice that I'm calling you the wrong name. The proposed artwork is a sculpture by an artist named David Spellerberg, and it's entitled A Day to Remember. Now, let me kind of talk about the location. The location is in a triangular planter, kind of in front of 85 degrees, between 85 Degree Bakery and the street, Garvey. So Here's Garvey. This is sort of where the on-ramp and off-ramp are. This is the underpass of Citrus to the north. This is the gas station that's currently being remodeled. And this is where 85 Degrees is. And so right in front of that, there's this triangular landscape planter. That is where the proposed artwork would be located. The bronze sculpture is 2 life-size horses. Actually, I think they're a little larger than life-size, but they're like life-size at 7.5 feet tall and 6 feet tall. They have 2 children that are welded on top of the taller horse. And so you can see them there on the left side. And then on the next slide, you can see a close-up of what the children would look like. They would be life-size 5- and 7-year-old child. The proposed artwork would be mounted on a triangular-shaped base that is approximately 4 feet in height, and the base would utilize brick veneer that is used in the shopping center buildings. The total cost for purchasing the artwork is $68,500, and there is attachment 2 in your packet that shows the invoice for that from Mr. Spellerberg. There's also additional costs that would be incurred on installation of the artwork. That includes materials and labor to construct the base and costs to install the artwork. And the applicant believes that'll cost around $15,000 for those things. So that comes to a grand total of about $83,500, and their artwork allocation is $58,000. So their expenditures are exceeding their artwork allocation. In the last part of the staff report, we provide you the standards that the Commission should be looking at in terms of reviewing public artwork. So I'll just cover those quickly. It's basically location, materials, and maintenance. The location question is, it's public art, is it public? And is it art? I guess those are the 2 questions you ask when public art. And we've already discussed that it's art because it's done by an artist. Secondly, I think I'll go back to the previous slide. Location, they're proposing to install it in front of the McIntyre Square Shopping Center, so it'll be very visible from Garvey Avenue, probably somewhat visible from Citrus, and somewhat visible from the freeway as well. Materials, they're proposing a bronze sculpture with 2 horses and children, and bronze is a very durable material. I think we've seen that used in other artwork and other kinds of sculptures and monuments in the city, that it is a durable material. Third is maintenance. The applicant has provided some information on maintenance, and they intend to clean the sculpture a couple times a year, as I understand it. And the McIntyre company has several other bronze sculptures that I think they're used to cleaning and taking care of and maintaining, so I think they'll just put that on their list of annual duties they need to take care of. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve Art in Public Places number 1201, and that concludes staff's presentation. Be happy to answer any questions.
Very good, thank you. Any questions of staff this time? Commissioner Menke?
Since we just reviewed this a couple of months ago for preliminary purposes, could you tell us what, if anything, is different from that review we did at that time?
There's no difference on what they're proposing. They've got a little bit more information. We've got the contract. We've got information on the maintenance, which we didn't have before. We have further information on the base, which we didn't have before. So that's the information that we have now that we didn't have before, but the sculptures haven't changed. Basically, it's the same size sculpture. All the details of the sculpture have not changed.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner?
Yeah, I noticed on the picture something I didn't notice before. Are the clothes that the children have on, are they like painted blue? It looked like it was blue. And is a horse like more brown, or is it all one color?
The applicant may want to respond to that. I agree with you. They do look like they have a blue patina to them. I didn't see that anywhere in the write-up, but that could be there. I've seen that in other sculptures where they do that.
Okay. Oh, I don't have a problem. I just happened to notice it looked like it was blue. Okay. And then the horse itself is just a bronze color?
That's what it looks like. And again, maybe the applicant might want to respond to that if you want.
Any other questions? Staff first? Okay, seeing none. Mr. McIntyre?
Good evening. Yeah, we, in our statutes, just to liven them up a little bit, we like to highlight the clothing. So jeans is what we're trying to go with, as little kids like running around town in their jeans. And we do the T-shirts sometimes in white, but I don't believe, have T-shirts. Sometimes underneath the overalls, the kids will have T-shirts. But it's a real durable I wouldn't say it's a paint, more so it's like baked on. We did it on our one on Citrus in front of the vitamin shop.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And then a couple other things, just because we've had to deal with theft in the past with these things. One thing with these ones is they're going to be huge, so it should be a little more difficult to steal them. But we're putting solid steel, stainless steel rods through the horse's feet that go all the way through the statues and through the kid. So just by chance, if somebody tried to throw a chain around it and yank it, it's really going to be difficult. And they're going to be embedded. The stainless steel rods go into the base of the concrete, which then will be epoxied in, so they'll be pretty, besides the weight, stuck in there.
Thank you.
Good. Any other questions? Okay. I have one for him, Andy. I know you're going to be about 5 months before it gets installed, right, approximately?
Well, I took the risk on the last meeting with the approval, and we've already sent the check, the first half of the money. So I'm thinking the guy said it was going to take 4 months from January, so hopefully this thing will be in before June.
Oh, yeah, okay. The reason I asked is I had a thought in my mind, seeing this as such a beautiful project, and there are a lot of people in West Covina interested in public art. Have you thought about having some kind of an unveiling where you can invite the public?
Absolutely.
You have,
and
I figured you already thought of that, so it's okay.
This is going to be killer. It really is. It's going to be, I imagine the idea was we wanted to make it visible from the freeway. We want people, when they're driving on that freeway, they're going to turn their head and be like, whoa. And we didn't want it to be cheesy or, non-class. We want it to be really classy. So the only question is how do we keep it covered, possibly, until then. So we'd have to do it really quickly. But yeah, absolutely. We'd love to have a unveiling for the community, for everybody to come out there and check it out.
Right, because I was thinking, everybody in the east end of West Covina sees your beautiful center all the time, but, the whole town would have a chance to see the buildings and, the tenants and everything there. It'd be a good opportunity for everything.
It's a great idea. Yeah,
Good.
invite them up. I do take that for granted that I don't realize that the whole city doesn't always go by there all the time.
That's very true.
So, good idea.
Okay, thank you, Senator. Anyone else wishing to speak for the project? Do we have anybody wish to speak against it? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public testimony and open it up to the commission. Who would like to speak first? Anybody? Commissioner Blackburn.
I think what Andy said as far as visibility from the freeway is a great idea. It's I don't know how many times I've driven down a freeway just within the last 4 or 5 months and be able to see the center and how much work has been done and how attractive it is, how it really has helped that shopping center. It's helped that part of town. And like I say, I can just visualize at night with the lights on the statue just being a very, very exciting addition to not only the center but to West Covina.
Good, thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Menifee?
I just echo Commissioner Blackburn's comments.
All right. Any other comments?
It's a wonderful addition to our city.
Exactly right. I think we all agree on the project being a great asset for the city and especially for that center there. It shows a lot of work and a lot of thought into the whole project, so I'm really looking forward to seeing the completed project. Any other questions? If not, we'll go ahead and ask for a motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve.
Okay, Commissioner Holtz, second by Commissioner Menifee. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you very much, Andrew. All right, we'll move on to item number 4, which is a tree removal permit number 13-01. Removal of an oak tree, and the applicant is Winnie Kwok at 401 North Hartley Street in West Covina. Can we have a staff report, please?
Senior Planner Fabiola Wong will be presenting that report.
Very good, thank you.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. Today in front of you is that request of a tree removal. She would like to remove the tree because it blocks the sunlight at the rear of the property, and also it tends to drop a lot of leaves on top of her roof. The tree is located about approximately 14.5 feet from the rear of the house. That's the tree from the front, how it looks from the street. and that's the tree located in the rear yard, and it's approximately 14 and a half feet from the rear of the house and about 9 feet 3 inches from the north side of the house, and about 12 feet from the south property line, which is to the wall. Any oak tree, according to the city code, any oak tree located anywhere in the lot that has a caliper of 6 inches or more is defined as a significant tree. The subject tree is about 50 feet in height and has a diameter of approximately 4 feet. In order to remove a significant tree, obviously the person will have to apply for a tree removal permit. In this case, that's what she did, and the planning director did review her application, and based on the criteria that is included in the municipal code that guides the director to make that decision, which that criteria has been included in your staff report. There are 5 items that must be considered, and based on the assessment of the city's certified arborist, the tree is in really good health, in good condition. There's nothing, it's not diseased, there's really nothing wrong. The applicant is not proposing new construction, and based on that criteria, the planning director denied the permit, which the property owner has appealed. Therefore, Planning Commission has flexibility to either uphold the decision of the planning director or approve the tree removal permit. That's some of the leaves that have accumulated on the roof, and that's to try to give you more or less an idea of how big this tree is. Therefore, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution upholding the decision of the planning director and denying tree removal permit. The applicant is also here if you would like to ask her any further questions. And I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any of staff.
Very good. Any questions of?
I have a question.
Okay, Commissioner.
Please. The second slide you showed in the rear of their property, no, next one, this one. There looks to me like a piece of the tree was taken off at some time when I see that flat spot up above the roof line. Do you know if that's the case?
You know, like any other tree, branches do fall sometimes, or they might be cut off as part of the maintenance. The applicant did indicate that about 3-4 years ago, she had it trimmed, and that's also one of her concerns is the fact that it's costly. You know, there's a cost involved in trimming the tree.
And the arborist said that was attractive, huh?
I'm sorry?
The arborist said that was in good condition and
That is
attractive?
correct, yes. That is correct.
I'm not sure he would use the word attractive, but in good condition and not in a disease situation.
Just okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? I just have one. I missed the one slide. Is that a deciduous tree?
I don't think it is. It's
California oak trees are not deciduous.
Not deciduous.
They don't lose their leaves at all.
Very good.
Well, I shouldn't say that. They don't lose their leaves all at one time.
Well,
They lose them all the
yeah.
time, that's right.
All right. Any other questions of the staff?
I have a question.
Commissioner Woods.
Is the Are the roots a problem with the tree to the house? It looks like a tree that size, close to a house, can become a very
Right.
hazardous thing.
There was no evidence, as far as I was able to observe, and I apologize if I didn't take photos of the ground. There were any roots that were visible. It seems like most of the roots are kind of deep, but I didn't see any roots causing any problems to the structure, if that's your question.
No cracks in the walls or anything?
No. Yes. Oh, yeah, and the arborist also looked at that when we were out there.
Any other questions, staff?
I have one more.
Commissioner Messi?
Do you have any awareness of this? Looking at that leaning tree over the house, if we were to tell these folks they couldn't cut that thing down and it fell onto their house, are we liable for that?
No, we are not actually. Under the Government Code Section 818.4, which is included within the last, what is known as the California Government Claims Act, also referred as the California Tort Claims Act. It basically provides a public entity, says that a public entity is not liable for an injury caused by the issuance, denial, or suspension of revocation, or by the failure or refusal to issue, deny, suspend, revoke any permit, license, certificate, or approval, basically authorized by a public entity or an employee, is authorized or by enactment to determine whether or not such authorization should be issued, denied, suspended, or revoked. So to answer your question, the answer is no.
No. Thank you.
And that's covered under the Government Code section. I just
Very good, thank you.
And that's
Okay.
one of the reasons why we also get in touch with it. Most healthy trees don't fall down. There is occasion because of a windstorm or a heavy rain and a windstorm combination that it might, but most of the time when trees fall down, it's because they're not healthy. So that's why you get that arborist to look at and determine if it's an unhealthy condition. And the position of the state, which I believe is what Fabiola was kind of wording there, is that the state wants to protect the heritage trees, and I'm using that term a little bit liberally here, but the trees that have been around and have been part of California since many times before the houses were built. So their interest is in protecting them, because based on if the city was going to be liable every time, then people would just be cutting them down right and left, because then we wouldn't have any oak trees left, at least in yards.
And just to mention, the arborist did say that probably the tree was in need of some maintenance to be pruned, but that's one of the concerns that the property owner has, which is the cost of pruning the tree and providing the maintenance that's needed.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Woods? Oh, excuse me, Commissioner Holtz, excuse me.
I'm looking at the photo of the map, and it looks like there's big trees on the house on each side and to the rear of this house. It's not like that's the only one that's there. Did you happen to view the immediate surrounding areas there?
There is an oak tree immediately to the north, immediately to the south. To the north, there's big trees, but they're not oak trees. The only one that I saw was immediately to the north of the subject property. I mean, south.
To the south, okay. And what about to the rear? Big trees.
I did not see, there are big trees, but I'm not sure that they're oak trees.
Okay. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Any other questions of staff this time?
And the one to the south is further back on the property. As I observed from Google, I can see the difference there. Yeah.
Potentially, I didn't go on that property to exactly know how much farther it is located at.
Right. Okay, thank you. I do have a speaker card here for the applicant. Would you like to speak now?
Good evening. I'm not so good in speaking English, so can I have my daughter translate for me?
Certainly. Thank you.
Good evening. This discussion, it was mostly pointed out with the main concern of the tree falling. Actually, there's also another concern where the tree makes the house very cold. It's nearly around 60 degrees, and with a whole bunch of oak trees around, there's rarely any sunlight in the house. And with a sister with scoliosis and cerebral palsy, the temperature it's not seems to be good for her health, and so yeah.
And the friend can.
Oh, and
due to the high wind, when the high wind.
Oh, she's also concerned with high winds, the branches may fall onto to the house rather than the entire tree falling on the house. Okay, thank you.
That's it? Okay, thank you very much. Mhm. Okay. Commissioner?
I have a question for you.
You, back up a second. I got a question for you. Commissioner Holtz, go ahead.
Yes, when you had your tree trimmed, did they do any lacing? Do you know what lacing is? Instead of just chopping a tree back, they go in and cut certain branches out so you get more air and more light through. Do you know if there was a discussion of that?
I lived in that house about 20 years, and I trim my tree about 3 to 4 times. I have to trim it like every 2 years because it grows so fast, and because my budget, so I have to trim it like 5 years, 6 years, and the one who trimmed the tree for me, they said I cannot trim more than like 70%. Yeah, so it just look like I just waste money, and I can see a little bit sun to my house for maybe for 1 year, and the second year, the third year, the tree just grows so fast.
Good, thank you. One more question. Commissioner Holtz?
You answered the question I had about how long have you lived there, and you said 20 years.
Yes.
Okay. If you take this tree down, do you plan on putting another tree back there that doesn't grow so big?
I love tree. I love tree, but because this tree is too big and it covers all the house, and we get scared when the big stump make the noise of the tree. We're very scared. Yeah.
Mommy,
Yes, I will grow another tree.
Thank you.
Yes.
Your neighbors, I noticed, have a tree further back on their property, near their back wall. Maybe you can consider something like that for a location for a tree.
Look like on the from my backyard on the left side of my house, I saw there's another big tree, and I believe that's oak tree. Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Blackburn, you have a question?
Thank you. I sympathize with what you're going through, and I can kind of empathize with you. I'll just share a quick story about an oak tree that I have in my yard. My neighbor came over about 2 months ago. He put solar panels on a guest house, and because my tree was so many branches and so thick, the solar panels wouldn't work. I had a tree serviceman come in and not only top part of the tree, thin the tree, and my neighbor's roof that basically had maybe 10% sunlight now has probably 95%, and I've been in my house for 35 years and I've never trimmed that tree, so it looks very good. I would almost encourage you to, if your concern is the heat, maybe the sun is shading the house, I would suggest maybe get a couple of estimates of some tree people to come out and just see how much they could actually trim it, possibly top some of it, thin the branches out, so it's not, the integrity of the tree is still there, but hopefully it would give you possibly more opening for the sunlight. I don't think any of the 4 or 5 criterias that the city allows or the state allows as far as removing the trees, I don't see that any of those criteria are a concern of yours right now. So it would be difficult for me to go along with removing that tree.
Okay. I have 2 things I want to ask the city. if I can trim the tree more than 50% at least, and if the city will share the cost with me.
If that's a question,
Then
I don't
then
know.
I keep the oak tree because I love tree too.
Actually, as far as sharing the costs, we couldn't make any thing like that here at this planning commission. You know, you'd have to go to a different part of the city for that. But I think the staff can answer your question about how much you can trim it back. Is it 20%, Jeff? Is the maximum you can trim one back?
What the code says is that, well, I'll just read it so I don't interpret it and get it wrong. No person shall prune or trim more than 10% of live foliage or limbs from any oak tree as defined in this article, or cause the same to be done unless an excess pruning permit is first obtained from the Pine Division. So they can prune up to 10%, remove up to 10% without going through us, but if they want to do more than that, they need a tree removal. They could do it under this tree removal permit, but they need to get a certified arborist to do the work. And then the certified arborist knows how much to cut. He's an expert in trees growth, and he's going to know how much to cut that won't damage the tree, the shape of the tree and the health of the tree.
Right.
So they do have an option. I can't give you a percentage because that is really more of an expert, and it probably depends on the shape of the tree and the individual tree. But they definitely could remove more than 10%. Under this scenario, under the tree removal permit, I guess, and we can talk about more about that if that's the desire to see that go. We can
Right.
work that out tonight to some degree.
Did you understand what he just said there?
Yes, I'm sorry. When he said 10%, then I think I say something wrong. When I say 70%, maybe 30%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what he said was
Yeah.
you can trim 10% with no problem. If you go excess of 10%, you have to have a permit from the city, which you already are here for a permit. But you'll have to have an arborist,
Right.
an expert, tell you what you can really trim back and still maintain the integrity of the tree.
Right, I understand, but 10% seems like nothing. 1 year it go back.
Yeah. Well, if it's 10%, if it's 50 feet tall, that's 5 feet. So anyway.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, yes.
I'd like to ask a question, but before I ask that question, which has to do with what brought you here,
Okay.
I just want to comment. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. But my God, I didn't know I needed anybody's permission to cut down trees. I've cut down 3 or 4 trees on my property. They weren't oak trees, but if they had been, I wouldn't know that. So I'm interested in what brought you to the city to ask for permission to cut your tree.
Because every time I ask the people to trim the tree, they all said that.
Really?
And they always do it on the Saturday, Sunday for me.
Oh,
Yeah.
of course.
And I think I can respond to that to some degree. If she's getting a licensed tree trimmer or an arborist, they're going to know the law. Just like a contractor is supposed to know the law to pull a permit, he can claim ignorance, but if he's a contractor, he knows. The same thing applies to a tree trimmer. Now, of course, there are tree trimmers that are unlicensed, but she's hiring legitimate tree trimmers who are going
I
to...
can tell you about 3 or 4 licensed tree trimmers that have never told me I needed anybody's permission. That's amazing.
Well,
So I guess those among us ought to understand, if you've cut down a tree before, you ought to give some consideration to
But it's not every
what we're
tree,
doing
though.
here.
It's only
I
certain
understand
types
that.
of
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
have a
safe
question.
because I haven't cut down an oak tree or a sycamore. Right.
Commissioner Woods?
I have a question. You mentioned something about health problems when you, wouldn't that be considered over some rules we have why you can't cut it down? To me, that would take precedent.
I can answer that question, but I'd prefer probably to get past the discussion with the applicant, and then I can maybe lay out some of the issues about that, because I think you raise a valid point. But I'd rather have Mrs. Kwok have been answered all her, or you ask her all the questions and have her sit down before we get into that discussion.
Right. Did you understand what he just said there? Yeah. So do you think you want to pursue our first thought here, to have an expert tell you what you can do to your tree and then bring it back to us instead of this one to take it down? Because I don't think we're going to be in favor of just taking it away tonight. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Well, I would suggest, before you ask her that, maybe you have a discussion
Yeah,
and
yeah.
determine where you're at before you ask her what she's willing to
Right.
do.
So if you like, we'll talk among ourselves here in the Planning Commission and see what we come up with, okay? Okay, that'd be fine. Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak for this project? For or against? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close that discussion. And Jeff, you got something?
Let me go ahead and present my thoughts and maybe give you guys a framework, and then you can start discussing what you think is the best approach. First of all, I would say that the staff tries very diligently to not establish policy. That's really not our goal, to establish policy. Our goal is to try to follow policy. In this case, the code really written direction, very clear direction to us of when to approve and when to not approve removal of a tree. So that's why we've done what we've done. Clearly, the applicant has the ability to appeal it here. We have no animosity against that. We feel that the Planning Commission has a little bit more, although there's written policy there, the Planning Commission has some ability to interpret policy more than we try to interpret. So that's one of the reasons it's here. So Commissioner Woods makes a valid statement that there may be circumstances that are not thought of that are enlisted in the code as reasons to approve something that staff, because of the direction, isn't willing to take that step because it's sort of a policy decision. I do believe that the commissioners have the ability to make other interpretations besides what the code specifically says, because the code can never think of every situation that's out there. So I put that out there. I think that's a valid point. I think that there's a couple options here. The Planning Commission can uphold the decision and deny. The Planning Commission can what's the other alternative? Well, no, the other alternative we have is to basically not uphold our decision and approve the removal. Then the other question that the Planning Commission could do is basically continue it with asking the applicant, Mrs. Kwok, to go back and analyze whether she's willing to do the things you discussed there, do lacing or some other way to thin the tree under the permit that she's already submitted the application for with a certified arborist, and then we either bring it back to you or we settle and we don't have to come back. So I think those are the three options that I see available to the Planning Commission tonight. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions if there's an issue or an avenue that I missed.
All right. I'll go ahead and put it up for commission discussion now. Commissioner Blackburn?
I just had a question of Jeff. The arborist, that would we send out the city arborist to look at it and evaluate it for the applicant, or would they have to have their own arborist go out?
They would need to have their own arborist. What we're looking at now is the trimming of the tree. So the city arborist obviously doesn't trim city trees. He oversees the city's forest of trees, if you will. But if someone on a private tree, just like the rest of us, they need to go hire someone.
Could they evaluate it and maybe make a recommendation or a suggestion?
I don't know that that's a good use of his time, and he's not in our department. He's not under my supervision, so we ask him, he helps us with things, but we obviously don't direct him in terms of workload.
Very good. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Mr. Holt, do you have anything to say? Commissioner Woods? Commissioner, you have any comments?
No.
Commissioner?
Well, I would just say that I'm concerned about the expense for this lady to have to hire an arborist and hire people to protect something that appears to be clearly a danger for health purposes for one of the children in the home. As Commissioner Woods said, I think there's some mitigating circumstances that we really need to give serious consideration to before we cause her to have to do lots of unnecessary, expensive things.
Good. Thank you. Commissioner Holtz?
Yeah, the item was mentioned about health. We don't know that. I mean, anybody can come up here and say it's a health issue. I mean, how do we know that it is? I think she has some options. Number one, she's lived there for 20 years. It's not like it's something that's new. And I think if she has the option to go get an extra permit to get more of it trimmed, would be a viable option for her. There's other oak trees in the area. I'm looking at this, and when I went by, it's a big tree, but there's other big trees that are there. And I don't see that it's immediate danger. We had an arborist go out and said it's healthy, it's in good shape. It's not like limbs are going to fall off or anything like that. I mean, it could always be struck by lightning, but that could happen anywhere. So I just, before we consider that there's health issues, I think we need to have that verified. Anybody can come up and say it's a health issue. So I'm in favor of if she wants to get that extra permit to have extra amount trimmed from the tree to see if that helps alleviate the problem.
Good, thank you. Actually, we can use this same permit number right here.
Yes.
However, question for staff, when she brings back the results of the arborist, we should know before they start how much they're going to take off, right? In other words, we don't want it taken down to a stub. We want to know how much they're cutting back. Is that the idea?
I think that's generally the idea. I'm not sure that they can always tell exactly, because part of it depends on when they get up there, how much.
Within range, actually.
Yeah, within some range, yeah, I agree.
Because actually, that's my way of thinking of it right now, to use this permit number, get more taken off of it, see if the sunlight comes through, and if the heat in the house is the only factor, that should help a lot. So that would be my solution for right now. So should we go ahead and make a resolution towards that effect? Okay, shall we go ahead and use the resolution number?
Yes,
And
you can, what you might want to do is make a motion. Well, I'm not sure. I think you need to figure out if you've got a majority, that's their opinion, and then ask Mrs. Kwok if she's willing to go back and do that. Yes.
okay, fine.
Dave, question.
Commissioner Blackburn,
Am I out of order if I wanted to ask the applicant a question?
we can call her up.
The chairman, yeah.
We can call her up. Come right up.
You stated earlier that you've had the tree trimmed in the past. Do you mind me asking what the cost was, what you were charged to have the tree trimmed?
Like the first time, the second time, maybe more than 10 years, I paid less than 1,000, around 800. But the third time I don't remember, but the last time I remember is like 1,200 or 1,100. Yeah.
Just a comment. That certainly seems a little bit high from what I've experienced with tree removals and stuff.
Yes, because they said the tree is too big.
Okay.
Can I answer your question?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. All right. What I suggested was, everybody heard it. Does that anybody go along with my thinking on the same idea?
I do.
Okay. And Commissioner Holtz?
Yeah.
Commissioner
And that
Menifee?
is to just delay this process while she determines what it would cost to lace it or to clear it out somehow.
Yeah, as opposed to just taking it down and see if that solves the heat problem. You won't know after it's cut naturally, but I think that'd be the best step, in my opinion. So, yeah, Commissioner Holtz?
I would make a suggestion, too, that you get more than one bid. Maybe get 2 or 3 bids, just don't take one. Get 2 or 3 to come out there so that you have an option of which bid to take if you decide to go that way.
So we're asking her to hire an arborist to determine the work to be done and then get some bids?
Get the bids from an arborist. Arborists are also trim trees. Right.
Oh, do they?
A lot of times what it is the arborist oversees the trimming of the trees. He might not be actually up there, but he is a foreman, if you will.
All right, so we want to use this resolution number that we have here then, and
You don't need a resolution to continue.
Because we're gonna go
That's the
different.
beauty of that. You can just make a motion and take a vote, and then and just continue it to work with staff and bring it back if it's such time if it's necessary.
Oh,
Because
right.
it may not be necessary to come back to the planning commission. If we can,
Right.
we can work with Ms. Kwok and she can be satisfied.
So can we have a
Would
motion?
would it also be considerate to ask her if she could provide some medical evidence of someone in the house who was bothered by the coolness caused by this tree?
Maybe that's advice to her if she wants to come back again with a request to remove.
All right, good. So we can have a motion, what we just talked about? Somebody?
So moved.
So moved. Do we have a second? Okay. The motion was by Commissioner Menifee and seconded by Commissioner Holtz. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carries 5-0. Did you understand what we did now? Okay. We're trying to work with you on it, so hopefully everything will work out okay for you. Okay? Thank you very much. All right, we move on to item 5, which is a study session, Code Amendment number 11-01, multifamily zones. Staff report, please.
Associate Planner Ron Garcia will be presenting that report, which you've been waiting for a month or so.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the Commission. Leaving off from the last Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission held a study session pertaining to the Code Amendment to educate the Planning Commission on concerns of the number of type of variances most commonly requested for multifamily development in the city. At that time, the Planning Commission directed staff to provide examples of the most commonly requested variances. Staff has prepared that for your review. As indicated in your staff report, Table 1, as indicated as Attachment 2 in the staff report, specifies the variances requested with the appropriate definition to understand what the development standard requires for multifamily development. Those categories include maximum ground coverage, which is the total amount of land covered by structures, carports, garages, paved areas, could be parking, access ways, decks, etc. The other is a recreational space dimension. And those are categorized by second-story development, multifamily development, and also third-story development. Third, recreational space size, which is a minimum of 200 square feet of usable recreational space for each dwelling unit provided. Maximum height within 100 feet of residential, and that's categorized for multifamily development for 8 units per acre, 15 units per acre, and 20 units per acre. The other is lot width, and again, those are categorized for multifamily for 8 units per acre, 15 and 20. Building separation. There is building separation, which is a minimum yard requirement around all main building exterior walls. Setbacks. The most commonly one requested is for rear, and that was for multifamily residential 20 for a 20-foot rear yard setback. Table 2, I'll direct you to Table 2 as Attachment 3, indicates 6 multifamily residential projects that staff processed since 2001, including the most commonly requested variances that I just briefly went over. Those developments included senior villas 1 and 2, and what staff did here is I've stricken those out of the presentation because when staff was reviewing the presentation, senior development allows for a deviation from the code requirements, so we struck those out. The first is Gold Ridge and Crest. There were 2 variances requested. The first was maximum height within 100 feet of residential. And just to give you an idea of what was requested, the building height, again, is 25 feet within 100 feet of single family. That project propose a 32 feet in height in areas within 100 feet of single-family zone. And this is just an area of Rich and Keston. This is Grand. This is Grand here. This is zone on the far east side of the property line is zone single-family. So it was these units here that requested that variance for height within 100 feet of residential. The next slide here,
Take a note here. Me and Ron, we'll probably just kind of tag team here a little bit, but if you have any questions, and we want to go through this, and it may be a little confusing, but I think it's part of the learning curve we want you to kind of get up to. But when you have that 100-foot distance, it could be zoning or it could be development. In other words, you might have zoning that's residential. Most residential zoning has residential development on it, but some doesn't. And you also have situations where you have a commercial zone that has a residential development on it. So it could be either one. And this is one of those circumstances because I think the next door neighboring use is a church or religious facility. But it's zoned R1. So they still need to meet the height limit even though there's not residential over there. I just wanted to make that clear.
thank you, Jeff. The second variance that was requested for that project was building separation. And the building separation there were for units that were located in here, given the compactness of the proposal. Separation for building was in this area, it was found in this area as well. And again, it was based on what they had proposed. To give you an idea of the feet for the distance between buildings, that required 17 feet, between 17 feet and 22 feet. And the project proposed a 20 feet between two of the buildings, again, where 22 feet would be required, and it comes to a deviation of about 2 feet. The second project here is the Workman McIntyre condos. The variances there that were requested were for maximum ground coverage. The maximum ground coverage there required 55%, and that project requested a ground coverage of 70%. This is just an aerial here of the location.
And just, you might note that that's where the Senior Villas 2 was constructed. This project was never constructed.
Never done, right?
But we did review it, and so there were variances, so we wanted to cover for you what variances were necessary there.
And the second variance requested there was recreational space dimension. And the dimension there required a minimum dimension of 50 feet. And the recreational space that they were proposing in this area, the site where was here and here. And again, the minimum dimension there for recreational space was 50 feet. The third variance was for lot width. The lot width there requires 150 feet, and the subject property proposed was 134 feet, which is from here to here on this side. So the width and the depth. The third project, Sunset McIntyre Homes, which is just south of here. This is an aerial photo showing the properties included in that development was this single-family house here and this single-family parcel here. The variances requested were for rear setbacks, second-story rear setbacks. The project proposed a 10-foot second-story rear setback, where a 20-foot rear setback was required. And again, the setback was requested along here, so they're requesting a 10-foot setback where 20 feet is required by the code. The second is maximum ground coverage. The proposal there required 55% and proposed a total of 64%. The third variance for that project was recreational space minimum dimension. Again, as indicated, the required minimum dimension is 50 feet, and the project proposed between 11 feet and 37 feet. And that recreational space was designated in this area, which is a lawn area that included a barbecue area and bench. And fourth, building separation. The building separation for this project required a building separation of 14 feet. The project proposed 8 feet. You can see here there were two-story townhome condominiums proposed here and here. Here, this location here, and along here. And the last multifamily development example is 4101 Nogales condominium. That project included a retail building that was proposed here and a multifamily 33-unit condominium proposed in this area. This is an aerial of that site. And the second site indicates specifically the location of the buildings. This is the retail building here. This is the existing two-story office building, and then the 33-unit condominium building. And the variance is requested in that project, again, just like the first example, is the maximum height within 100 feet of residential. In that proposal, they requested between a height of 66 feet and 48 feet, 10 inches within 100 feet. And there in that project specifically was for the cupola, the architectural cupola that they placed here, and for the main building here. So this was 48 feet within 100 feet of residential, which is along the westerly property line, and then the cupola, which is here. I've provided a elevation showing that. So you can see the architectural detail here. So that was 66 feet and then 48 feet here. The third variance requested was recreational space dimension. There, the project, given that the height and the proposal was 3 stories, the requirement was 75 feet, and the average recreational space dimension was 50 feet. And in those areas, specifically to this project, they included the recreational space here, the plaza area here, and located throughout the first, second, and third stories of each floors of the condominium building. And again, just to go over initially why the Planning Commission held a study session, and again, it was to educate the Planning Commission concerning the total number of types and variances most commonly requested for multifamily developments within the city. The last slide here that I'd like to go over, this is an example in taking into consideration the development standards that I went over in the beginning for ground coverage, recreational space dimension, recreational space size, and height within single family. This is an example of an existing multifamily apartment complex, and this one particularly is located on Sunset and Francisquito. And you can tell that in comparison to the code, the site is much larger. And what we've seen in these past couple of years are sites that are within an acre, 2 acres, not very large, such as what you see here. And you can see that this site, I don't know if variances were requested for this site, but you can see that the separation between buildings and just the enormous space that is provided to comply with those types of requirements. And so, given that, again, the code has not particularly provided attention to those smaller multifamily unit developments, given that that most of the development that we've seen, the city's pretty built out. So most of the sites that we're going to get today are as such as the ones that are on Sunset, on Workman for senior villas, and as the case with the sites located on Grand. And so that concludes staff's presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions. What staff envisions for the next study session is to provide information on alternative modifications to the municipal code.
Okay. Very good, Ron. Any questions, Ron? I have one for you, Ron. Let's go to number 3, Workman McIntyre condos.
Yes.
Ground coverage allowed is 55, and they went to 75 or something like that?
Hold on one second, I'm sorry. Yes.
So my question is, the 20% difference, was that taken away from parking, open space, or combination thereof? Or
It's a combination thereof, and it's a lot is heavily relied on the size of the site. So, but yes.
And it's ground coverage, so actually it's anything that doesn't have dirt exposed, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So basically, I think it
Yeah,
takes away from,
walkway.
it does, it's a landscaping area that's being reduced when you do that.
more than the parking, for
Yeah,
instance?
because parking is part of that calculation.
Yeah, 'cause
Parking it's not building coverage, it's ground coverage.
Yeah, so it's
Anything paved is part of that
so
calculation.
landscaping takes the hit, in other words,
Yeah,
but
that's
basically,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, staff? Okay, all right, Ron, thank you. We're going to move on then. Do you have more?
We have another study session.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that one's
Oh,
completed.
no, that's all we wanted to, it was more of
Okay.
an educational, kind of discussive, see if you had any questions. We're not looking for any vote or any direction
good.
right now. Ron said what we're going to be trying to do next, we'll be getting our heads together and coming back with another study session that will start more of a discussion, hopefully, and get direction from you of where to go on each individual item.
Very good. Okay, we'll move on to number 6, which is a study session for the code amendment number 13-01. It's pylon signs. Staff report, please.
Yes, I'll be presenting this. We did hold a study session on February 12th and discussed some concepts presented by staff regarding possible changes, and basically 5 total changes to the municipal code sign section that might address future variances, but definitely would have addressed some of the variances we've had in the past. I'm not going to necessarily go over those, but we do have attachment 1, which I'm going to we're going to go over, which is on the behind me on the overhead, and that is, again, that's attachment 1, kind of summarized. The last meeting we focused on the proposed standards. This meeting the focus is on the process. So the standards are there, which we discussed last time, and as I understood, the Planning Commission was comfortable with those standards, but we really didn't discuss the process, and that was sort of on purpose because I wanted to focus those in each discussion at a different time. So this chart is basically on process, and I'll try to explain it to you. First, it doesn't show up there, but we do have acronyms. We have 3 acronyms up there. We have SAR, which is a sign administrator review, and that's shown at the bottom of the page on attachment 1. A sign administrator review is a process that requires administrative review of a sign proposal by the planning director. So when staff gets that, they take it in, they review it with the planning director. A lot of times we review it together as a staff. but it's ultimately up to the planning director to make a decision, and then a letter is sent to the applicant approving it with conditions or approving it in some manner. The second process is an administrative use permit. Well, and I would say this, signed administrative reviews rarely, if ever, come to planning commission. So that's not something that even if you're on planning commission for a long time, you might never have seen one of those. They rarely get this far. Administrative use permits, that is also a staff-driven, but it requires notification of the surrounding properties, and that would be based on whatever there are different types of administrative use permits that require different levels of notification. Some neighboring properties, some 100 feet, some 300 feet. So there's different levels in the count. We can write it however the planning commission or council feels is most appropriate. So notification of surrounding properties required, but it is administrative review by the planning director. Clearly, when you have notification, any decision that's made by the planning director can be appealed to the planning commission, or it can be forwarded to the planning commission depending on the circumstance. So it still might get to the planning commission, but it wouldn't have to. A conditional use permit, I think you all understand what that is. It's notification of surrounding property owners required. That is, I believe in the code, it's always a 300-foot notification, and it requires a public hearing before the planning commission. So that's the three types of review that I think are probably most appropriate for a sign. So we'll go through these, and I did pass out the proposed changes we have in red so that you have that in front of you tonight if you wish to look back and remember what we're talking about here. Number one is modifying the business identification signs in terms of height, changing the tallest sign allowed for both single and multi-tenant standards from 35 to 40 feet. And currently that is a sign administrative review. And if you were to look at this sheet, you will see the SAR on there under permit required. So that's the existing code. Anything in black is the existing code. So everything in that column requires sign administrative review now. Got the three options in the middle there, and then the last of the recommendation, staff is comfortable in continuing to have that be a sign administrative review. Even though it's a little bit higher, it's not much higher, still under staff review. Number two, modifying the business identification sign in terms of size by adding a larger classification for multi-tenant standards, allowing a 450 square foot sign for centers greater than 500,000 square feet. And again, that is multi-tenant, so that will be on the second page of the handout I gave you, and it's adding a new category, but that category still is under the existing process of a sign administrative review. So based on the three options, staff is still comfortable that that would be a sign administrative review. Currently, there are only 2 centers in town that exceed that, so there's probably only 2 centers that would qualify for that. Could change someday in the future, but that's where it's at right now. Number 3, adding a new category in the detached sign section of the single tenant standards of freeway adjacent business identification. So if you go back to page 1, that would allow for 200 square foot signs at 35 feet in height if the subject property is adjacent to freeway or has a frontage on a street adjacent to the freeway. So anything that touches the freeway frontage or is on Garvey basically would qualify for that. Now that when we're adding a new section, so there is no process for that. That would be a brand new standard that we would have. So it could be any of the 3. Again, we're thinking that maybe a sign administrative review. That one, you know, we thought about it a little bit, but I think comfortable with a sign administrative review. One thing, we do have some processes with signs that require an administrative use permit now, and we do also, we've had, as you're aware, we've had several variances proposed. We rarely get much input on sign issues from a notification. That's not necessarily a reason not to do a notification, but I think if you think about it, most of the time when you're notifying people in the radius, there are other commercial businesses or institutional businesses, or it's an apartment complex, or it's houses that are close to the freeway but not maybe close to the use, and they're not, we just don't get that much input. So that's one of the reasons we leaned towards the SAR. Number 4 is basically the same thing, only for multi-tenant, and it's a little bit larger, 300 square foot signs and 40 feet in height. Same issue, there's no current section. We are comfortable with a sign administrative review. And one thing I would tell you also on the sign administrative review, similar to the process we just went through with the tree removal, where there are policies in the code that give direction to staff of what to approve in terms of design. Well, in trees it's not design, but for trees, there are also for signs for freestanding signs, there are standards that tell us guidelines that tell us what to approve and what not to approve. So it could be a scenario where we're okay with the sign, but we're concerned about the design, and we forward that to the Planning Commission because it's a design issue. Now, that could be appropriate, that the Planning Commission could desire to look at those guidelines again. I hadn't really thought of that before, but that is a possibility as part of this. That way, if the Planning Commission wants to set a policy of what they want those freestanding signs to look like, they can do that and give staff direction of what to approve. And if somebody doesn't want to follow the policy, then it goes to the Planning Commission to request an exception to that policy. It's not a variance, because it would be written in the code that they can be allowed to do that. So that's one thing we could discuss if you have other concerns about those two things we're adding being under staff review without having Planning Commission involvement. Fifth is modifying the freeway site bonus, which is a current standard in the code, and that is on page 3 of the handout I gave to you tonight. Modifying the freeway site bonus by changing the multiplier from 50% to 75%, changing the maximum sign area from 450 square feet to 800 square feet, and changing the maximum height from 45 to 60 feet. Currently, that's an administrative use permit, so it's staff level. I believe it's our thought process here that because we're now talking about fairly large signs that previously have always been variances, it might be a good idea for those to be conditional use permits, to bring them before the Planning Commission so that they can look at it, because those can be 60-foot tall signs and likely would be much of the time. So that is staff's presentation.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
On that particular page, SER, is that just a typo? Is that supposed to be SAR?
I'm sorry, where are you looking at?
The
Commissioner
page,
Oh, yes, it probably, yes.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, it is not.
what is an SER?
It's kind of funny. Well, I think it's funny. You may not. An SER is an AUP. So it's an alphabet soup thing. What is it, sign? I think it's sign exception review, but for whatever reason, they called it that, and they said it has to follow AUP procedures.
Okay.
So yes, I'm glad you pointed that out. Because so currently, that's why in the chart that you see there, it says it's an AUP, even though
Right.
the correct term in the code would be SER, but it's the same process as.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions or entertain any discussion about the recommended processes that were discussed here.
Any questions, staff? It's done a good job.
Beautiful job.
Now, on this one, we don't really need a vote. I guess if everybody's, we're just asking for you to provide direction. So I guess if you're comfortable, I don't necessarily need a vote. I guess it's just a nod of heads and say, and the next step is going to be a public hearing. So I would be preparing a resolution with a code amendment based on the discussions we've had here that would put that stuff in a code setup. Bring that back to you, and that would probably be your last chance to review that.
I think when we talked yesterday, I mentioned to you, I thought this particular set we have now will probably eliminate 90% of our people coming in for a variance, because this is a wider scope of, allowances. And we won't have too many, maybe once in a while we'll have one, but not very often, I think. I think this is a good set right here. And I think the rest of my commission would probably agree.
Yeah, it really is.
Okay. We'll move forward with that then.
Okay? Thank you.
And we're going to keep the conditional use permit for the freeway signs, right?
We would follow,
Route
based on what we just discussed here, we would do everything that I just presented to you.
Right.
That's what I would put in the code. Now, you still have an opportunity to discuss that at the time. And what I will do, because I didn't really think about that, but I will provide you with our design guidelines when we do that, just so you at least have a chance to look at that. And so you know if you want to tweak that, we might be able to do that just that night.
Good. Thank you, Jeff. Okay, we'll move on to number 7, which is a study session, initiation of a code amendment, automobile sales. Staff report, please.
Yes, this is something that came up recently when we were discussing one of the automobile sites. We have approximately 10 dealerships, and As you're aware, there are some dealerships now that have been sort of not functioning as a dealership for some time. And it came up when a question was asked of one of our staff members if automobile dealers were allowed in the zone that that particular dealership was in, and it turns out that they're not. So I don't have an explanation of why that is, because it's probably been that way for decades, and maybe as long as 50 years, but it's not. So I don't think anyone, I'm not sure, well, no one in the recent past did it on purpose, so I'm not sure why it was done to begin with. So our thought process is, when we looked at that, we found two dealerships that are located in a zone, the C2 zone, which is a medium commercial zone, which don't allow automobile dealerships. We would like to rectify that and come back with a code amendment that allows them in those zones so that they become permitted uses. It doesn't really directly affect Crestview Cadillac just because they're in business. But the other dealership on Citrus, it does affect because they are not in business and haven't been for some time, so they have lost their nonconformity. They are that's no longer allowed use there. And I don't think the city's intent is to lose that ability for that lot to be an auto dealership. So I believe our goal on this is going to be to put the pedal to the metal and get this handled at all speeds. So this may come. Then our next goal after you initiate would be to come back with a public hearing. It's a fairly simple change to the code. Now this one we do need it does need a resolution. Right. If you're willing to go along with it, it does need a resolution and a vote.
Okay. Do we have any questions, staff, before we go ahead and do this? Okay, I'll just make this, the resolution number is 13-5503?
Correct.
Okay. Resolution number 13-5503, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of West Covina, California, initiating a code amendment related to automobile dealerships in the City of West Covina. Can we have a roll call, please?
You need a motion
first.
So moved.
Commissioner Menifee, second by Commissioner Blackburn. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Blackburn. Commissioner Holtz.
Yes.
Commissioner Woods.
Yes.
Commissioner Menifee.
Yes.
Chairman Stewart.
Aye. Carries 5-0. Okay. All right, moving right along, we'll have Royal Communications. Mr. Redholz, anything to say tonight?
You've all done a fine job.
Irene Fleck, anything else? All right. Seeing none, we'll go ahead to the Commissioners' reports and miscellaneous items. Anything to report tonight? I think we...
Just a clarification, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I understand we are meeting on the 26th of this month.
That is correct. We have a meeting on the 26th. Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if our planning director has any information on whether we'll be here after the 31st of March. Are they going to renew our contracts or not?
I don't have any information on that, but as I believe it's still supposed to be on the agenda for next Tuesday night.
Good, thank you. On the comments, I think we all got our invitation to Ashley Furniture on Friday, next Friday at 9:30 in the morning, I believe it is.
It's this Friday. It's the 15th.
This Friday?
Yes.
9:30 in the morning? Okay, fine. Anything else from commissioners? All right. How about the planning director's report?
We have the monthly status report, project status report for the March is the item number 8 in your agenda packet. We did pass out an announcement for the 90th birthday celebration of the City of West Covina. So you have that if you're interested in attending that, or doesn't say anything about the golf tournament. I think there's a golf tournament, so some of you, I think, might enjoy that. So I think you want to get hold of community services if you're interested in that. And then also just to report that the City Council will be hearing the Dryden single-family house appeal on the next Tuesday night as well.
Right, very good. Anything else from the commission? Seeing none, do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
So moved. Second, anybody? Second by Commissioner Blackburn. All in favor? Aye. 5-0. Thank you very much.